Hi guys, today we're going to kind of review over some of the things that we've learned about the missions. It's going to stop and kind of go back over it. That Spain looks to Texas because remember, La Salle came in and he was French and built that Fort Lewis, and the Spanish did not like that because they didn't want anybody else on their land. So they wanted to look to Texas to start settling and building missions so that they could retain control over their land. Now, most Spanish activity in what is now Texas during the 1690s was in the eastern regions near French Louisiana, fearing that La Salle's arrival in 1685 would result in French settlements. Spanish officials moved quickly. As soon as they heard of La Salle's construction of Fort St. Louis, they sent troops to destroy it. An expedition led by Alonso de Leon, the governor of Coahuila, reached the site in April 22, 1689, only to find the fort had been deserted and in ruins. And of course, when we talked about it, we think that the Caragua Indians had something to do with that. They didn't like the Spanish there and the French there, either one. So now they decided that they were going to have to start settling and building missions. A Tejas mission. On their journey through East Texas, De Leon's troops met the Hassani, one of the Caddo peoples of that region. The Hassani called the Spanish Tasha, meaning ally or friend. From this Hassani word, the Spanish began to use the word Tejas to describe the area and its native people. The Hassani, English speakers, pronounced it Texas, and that is how Texas got its name. Father Damien Massonet, a Catholic Church official on the expedition with De Leon's troops, promised he would come back to the area at a later time. When the groups returned to Mexico, Massonet asked permission to found a mission among the Tejas, which of course he got, and that's how the missions began in East Texas. Now also today, and you do have to fill out a form just saying, you read this. Today we're going to also read a story about Angelina, who was in East Texas in 1691, and she was a Hassani woman, a Caddo woman, and she was called the Little Angel, Angelina. So I'm going to read it to you. It is online, Pearson, through the reading book, but I think it's easier just if, you went away, I went away, if I read it to you. Now you do need to take an AR test on this, so pay attention, and if you need to reread this again or look over it again, it's here on the video. Meeting new people. How do you feel when you meet a new person? Are you interested or maybe a little worried? Hundreds of years ago, a Texas woman had to meet very strange visitors. She was a member of the Caddo people. The stranger called her Angelina. That name is Spanish for a little angel. This statue is in Lufkin, Texas. Angelina is helping a Spanish missionary talk with one of her people. The Caddo way of life. The Caddo were American Indians who lived in East Texas. They used the resources around them. They made clothes from skins of animals. They hunted. They made houses from bundles of grass that covered wood frames. The Caddo were good farmers and grew many crops. Corn was their main food. And here's a picture of the Caddo. Covered their homes with grass to keep out of the wind and rain. I hope you remember that we did study the Caddo, one of our Indian tribes. Caddo men fished and hunted deer and other animals. The Caddo ate the meat, used the skins for clothing, and made tools out of bone. Angelina grew up learning many skills. She learned how to farm, cook, sew, and care for children. Then one day, strangers came to her village. She found out she had another important skill. So here they are taking the crops. Angelina and people welcomed the Spanish. Here the Spanish and the Caddo meeting. Strangers arrive. One day in the spring of 1690, So Spanish men came to Angelina's village. They were different from any people the Caddo had seen before. Some of the Spanish wore armor and helmets. They rode horses, which the Caddo had never seen. Some of the strangers wore long brown robes. The Caddo welcomed the strangers by saying Tachas. It meant friend in their language. And the name Texas comes from how the Spanish said the word. The Caddo fed the visitors and gave them a place to sleep. Angelina was curious. She wanted to talk to them in their language. Angelina asks to learn. Angelina told one of the Spanish men that she wanted to learn his language. This man was Father Damien Massenet. He was a missionary. He planned to start a mission among the Caddo. He wanted the Caddo to become Roman Catholics and to learn the Spanish ways. Now this is in East Texas, where we live. This is a copy of the first Spanish mission in Texas. Angelina might have gone to church in this building or like it. Now it's different because we live where all the piney woods are, so they built the mission out of wood. An important role. Angelina began to speak Spanish. As she did, she became an interpreter. She used the Caddo language to tell her people what the Spanish said. She used Spanish to tell the Spanish what the Caddo said. The Spanish built their mission, and Angelina decided to become a Christian. Angelina takes a trip. A few years later, Angelina took a trip south to what is now Mexico. She lived there for many years and became even better at speaking Spanish. Angelina lived for a while in a Mexican town where this church is. New visitors. Frenchman St. Denis hoped to trade with American Indians in Texas. French again. Angelina returned to East Texas in 1712. Some men from France came to her village and they wanted to trade with the Caddo. Angelina spoke Spanish to the visitors. One of them, Louis Jacquard de St. Denis, could also speak Spanish. He asked for guides to help him travel in the area. Angelina asked some of her people to go with them. However, the Spanish did not want the French to trade with the American Indians in Texas. They arrested St. Denis. Of course they didn't want the French to trade with them. They didn't want anybody to trade with them but themselves. At this time, the Spanish built the mission now called the Alamo. The Spanish come back. Spanish leaders worried that the French would try to take over Texas. They decided to build new missions to keep that from happening. The Spanish sent an expedition or traveling party to East Texas. St. Denis led the Spanish back to Angelina's village. Once again, she was the interpreter for her people and the Spanish. The Spanish missionaries started several new missions in East Texas. Angelina began to follow Christianity again. The missionaries leave. In 1719, France and Spain began a war in Europe. That war had effects in Texas. Some French soldiers attacked one of the Spanish missions near the Caddo. The Spanish missionaries at other missions did not feel safe. They decided to leave all the missions in East Texas. Saving a life. The next year, Angelina helped save someone's life. A Frenchman named François Seminars de Basile had been enslaved by the Caragua people. We know about them, don't we? They treated him harshly and he wanted to escape. The Caraguas lived along the Texas coast. Now, the red, this is all where the Caragua Indians lived, and this is the Caddo, including the Hashini tribe. They lived kind of up here. Remember Red River? We talked about that. But when people would wash up, most of the time they would get with those Caragua Indians, and they were not the friendly sort. Angelina helped save Belisi's life. Some Caddo rescued Belisi and brought him back to their village. Remember, the Caddo Indians were kind and much more friendly. Angelina fed him and cared for him until he was strong enough to travel again. She had two of her children guide him back to a French settlement. So he must have gone on. Let's move back over here. He was over here somewhere, so he went on to Louisiana, because remember, this was all French here. Spain's new missions. In 1721, a Spanish expedition came back to East Texas to start new missions. Angelina was the leader of her village. She stood with the Caddo chief to welcome the Spanish back. Again, she helped her people and the Spanish talk to each other. The Spanish built new missions in East Texas, and now Angelina could practice her faith again. Texans remember Angelina. The U.S. government set up Angelina National Forest to protect the woodlands where Angelina once lived. Now also, this is around Lufkin. I live in Livingston, so this is right down 59. And they also have a college named Angelina. So she is remembered widely there. I even think that there is a county, Angelina County. Okay, Texans remember Angelina. They have honored her in many ways. They named a river and a county. Yeah, they did, right there, in East Texas after her. She is the only woman to have a Texas county named for her. A national forest is named for her too, and a college. Texans also remember Angelina for how well she treated others. She wanted to learn about new people she met and speak their language. She showed how well people from different groups can get along. And that's the end of our book. Now, you need to take the quiz, the AR quiz, and it is on quiz number 953. And fill out your form to show that you were online today. And that's all. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And be kind to others like Angelina. Talk to you on Tuesday. Bye.